The great hall of the Galactic Assembly was filled with delegates from 100 worlds. Lights floated in the air like captured stars. Music played softly from somewhere far above. It was a night of celebration, for the Valorian sovereignty and the Terran Republic had finally signed their alliance treaty. Lady Salith Vorn stood near the tall windows, watching the crowds below. She was tall and graceful, with silver-blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the soft light. Her eyes were large and luminous, the color of pale amber. She wore the formal robes of her noble house, but she felt no joy tonight, that she had volunteered for this. She had to remember that. "The human delegation has arrived," her assistant said quietly. "They are bringing him now." Salith turned from the window. Her heart beat faster, though she kept her face calm. Tonight she would meet the man she was going to marry. A human, a stranger, a political tool wrapped in flesh and bone. The doors opened, and a group of Terran officials walked in. They wore their dark formal uniforms with silver buttons. In the middle of them walked a man of average height with brown hair and gray eyes. He was not tall. He was not impressive. He looked like someone who would disappear in a crowd. This was Lieutenant Daniel Harper. Her future husband. Salith studied him as he approached. He walked with a quiet step, his hands clasped behind his back. His face showed nothing. No nervousness. No excitement. No emotion at all. He simply walked forward like a man going to complete a simple task. The Terran ambassador stepped forward and made the introductions. Daniel bowed his head slightly to Salith. It was a respectful gesture, but there was no warmth in it. "Lady Vorn," he said. His voice was calm and soft. "It is an honor to meet you." "Lieutenant Harper," she replied. "Welcome to the assembly." They stood there for a moment, two strangers who would soon share a life together. Around them, delegates from other worlds whispered and watched. Salith could hear their words even from a distance. "That is the human they sent? He looks like a clerk." The Terrans must not value this alliance much. Perhaps they are insulting the Valorians on purpose. Salith felt a flash of anger, though she was not sure if it was directed at the whispering aliens or at the humans who had sent such an unremarkable man. She had expected a warrior, perhaps, or a famous diplomat, someone who would bring honor to this union. Instead, they had sent this quiet officer who looked like he had never seen a battlefield in his life. Daniel seemed to hear the whispers too. His gray eyes moved slightly, taking in the room, but his expression did not change. He simply stood there, patient and still, like a stone in a river letting the water flow around him. The ceremony took place 3 days later. It was held in the ancient temple on the Valorian homeworld, where noble marriages had been performed for 10,000 years. The walls were carved with the names of great houses. The ceiling was painted with stars and moons. Hundreds of guests filled the seats, representing dozens of species from across the galaxy. Salith walked down the long aisle in her ceremonial gown. It was white and silver, flowing behind her like water. Her family watched from the front row. Her mother's face was proud but sad. Her younger brother looked confused, too young to understand why his sister was marrying an alien. Daniel waited at the altar. He wore the black dress uniform of the Terran military. His medals caught the light. Salith noticed there were more of them than she had expected. She did not recognize what they meant. The priest spoke the old words. Salith and Daniel repeated the vows. They promised to honor each other, to support each other, to stand together in times of peace and war. The words felt hollow in Salith's mouth. She was making promises to a man she did not know. When it was done, Daniel took her hand. His grip was gentle but firm. His skin was warm, warmer than she had expected. Humans ran hotter than Valorians, she remembered reading. "Thank you," he said quietly, so only she could hear. I know this is not what you wanted." She looked at him in surprise. It was the first personal thing he had said to her. "It is my duty," she replied. "Yes," he said. "Mine too." There was something in his voice, a weight she could not identify. But before she could ask, the crowd began to applaud, and the moment was lost. The reception was long and exhausting. Saileth smiled until her face hurt. She shook hands with ambassadors and admirals and politicians. Daniel stood beside her through all of it, polite and quiet, answering questions with short, careful words. Late in the evening, Saileth found herself alone on a balcony, grateful for a moment of silence. The stars stretched out above her, cold and distant. She wondered which one was Earth, the human homeworld. She had never been there. She had never wanted to go. Footsteps approached behind her. She turned to find Daniel walking toward her, 2 glasses in his hands. "I thought you might want this," he said, offering her one. "It has been a long night." She took the glass. It was Valorian wine, she noticed. He had paid attention to what she might like. "Thank you," she said. They stood together in silence for a moment. Below them, the city lights sparkled like fallen stars. Above them, ships moved slowly across the sky, carrying passengers to distant worlds. "There is a ship out there," Daniel said suddenly, "near the 3rd moon. It has been holding position for the last 2 hours. Saileth looked but saw nothing. "How can you tell?" "The way the stars flicker. Something is blocking them." He shrugged slightly. "Probably just a cargo vessel waiting for clearance. But it seems odd." She stared at him. His gray eyes were still fixed on the sky, tracking something she could not see. For just a moment, his face changed. The blandness fell away, and she saw something sharp and focused underneath. Then it was gone. He smiled politely and turned back to her. "We should return to the reception," he said. "People will wonder where we are." Saileth followed him inside, but she kept thinking about that moment. The way his eyes had moved, the certainty in his voice, the way he had noticed something that everyone else had missed. Who was this man she had married? She did not know, but for the first time, she wondered if there was more to Daniel Harper than anyone realized. 3 months passed on the border world. Saileth's ancestral estate sat on a hill, overlooking purple forests and silver lakes. It was beautiful and peaceful, far from the politics of the homeworld. She had brought Daniel here after the wedding, hoping the distance would make their strange arrangement easier to bear. They had fallen into a routine. Breakfast together in the morning, separate work during the day, dinner in the evening, where they talked about safe things like weather and news and the beauty of the landscape. They were polite to each other, respectful, but they were still strangers sharing a house. Saileth watched her husband carefully during those months. She could not help herself. There was something about him that did not fit, like a picture hanging slightly crooked on a wall. Daniel woke every morning before the sun rose. She knew this because she sometimes could not sleep, and she would see him from her window, running alone through the gardens in the gray light. He moved with a steady rhythm, never stopping, never slowing. When he finished, he would stand still for a long moment, staring at the horizon like he was looking for something far away. He read constantly, not novels or poetry, but tactical history, battle reports, Defense Network analyses. When she asked him about it, he smiled and said he found it interesting. "Just a hobby," he told her. Something to pass the time. He was kind to everyone in the household. The servants loved him because he learned their names and asked about their families. Her younger brother, Tavek, visited for 2 weeks, and Daniel spent hours teaching him human card games and telling him stories about Earth. Tavek, who usually hated strangers, followed Daniel around like a small shadow. One evening, Saileth came into the study, and found Daniel at the computer terminal. He closed the screen quickly when she entered. "What were you looking at?" she asked. "Nothing important," he said. "Just studying the local defense grid. Your border stations are positioned well, but there are some gaps in the sensor coverage near the asteroid belt." She stared at him. "Why would you study our defense grid?" He shrugged. "Curiosity. Old habits." He smiled that polite, empty smile. "I was in the military for a long time. Hard to turn off that part of my brain." She wanted to ask more, but he changed the subject smoothly, and the moment passed. A week later, Admiral Torvik came to dinner. He was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Valorian fleet, a proud man with decades of service. He had known Salith's father before he died. The dinner started well enough. Torvik was charming and told old stories about battles and victories. But as the wine flowed, his words grew sharper. "So you are the human diplomat," he said to Daniel. "Tell me, what did you do in your military? Push papers? Count supplies?" "Something like that," Daniel said calmly. "I thought so." Torvik laughed. "No offense, Lieutenant, but humans make adequate soldiers. Strong, brave, willing to die. But strategy? Tactics? That requires a more developed mind. Your species is still young. You will learn in time." Salith felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. She opened her mouth to defend her husband, but Daniel spoke first. "You are probably right, Admiral," he said. "We have much to learn from species like yours." Torvik smiled, pleased with himself. He did not notice the slight tightening around Daniel's eyes. But Salith did. After the Admiral left, she found Daniel alone on the balcony. He was staring up at the stars again, his hands resting on the railing. The wind moved through his hair. His face was unreadable. "I'm sorry about Torvik," she said. "He is old and proud. He does not know what he is saying." "He knows exactly what he is saying," Daniel replied. There was no anger in his voice, just a quiet statement of fact. "And he is not entirely wrong. Humans are young. We have made many mistakes." She moved to stand beside him. "What did you do before the diplomatic course? What did you really do?" For a long moment, he did not answer. She thought he would deflect again, change the subject, smile that empty smile. But then he spoke. "I commanded a destroyer," he said. "The Resolute." Salith felt her breath catch. She knew that name. Everyone in the military circles knew that name. "The Resolute," she repeated. "The ship that held the line at Kethro Station." "Yes. That battle saved 3 colonies. 20 million people." "Yes." She turned to look at him. "The captain of the Resolute was listed as killed in action. A hero's death." Daniel was quiet for a moment. The stars reflected in his gray eyes. "The reports were convenient," he said finally. "Some victories come with costs that leadership prefers to bury. They gave me a medal and a funeral and a new identity. Then they put me in the diplomatic corps where I could not cause any more problems." Salith's mind was spinning. She had married a ghost. A dead hero walking around in a living body. "Why did they hide you?" she asked. He turned to face her. For the first time, she saw something real in his eyes. Pain. Old and deep, like a wound that had never healed. "Because I won that battle by sacrificing my crew," he said. "I ordered them to hold positions they could not hold. I watched good people die on my command because it was the only way to buy enough time for the evacuation ships to escape." He paused. Leadership called it a victory. I called it the worst day of my life. They thought it was better if Captain Daniel Harper stayed dead. Salith did not know what to say. She reached out and touched his arm, a small gesture of comfort. "I am sorry," she said. He looked at her hand on his arm. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. or gratitude. I have not told anyone that story in years, he said quietly. Why did you tell me? He thought about it for a moment. Because you asked, and because you actually wanted to know the answer. They stood together in silence as the stars wheeled slowly overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird called. Salith realized she was still touching his arm. She did not pull away. Maybe, she thought, this marriage would not be as empty as she had feared. The alarm woke them in the middle of the night. Salith sat up in her bed, her heart's pounding. Red emergency lights flashed through the windows. A deep horn was sounding somewhere in the distance, a sound she had only heard in drills before. She ran to the window and looked up at the sky. What she saw made her blood turn cold. Ships, dozens of them. Dark shapes moving against the stars like a swarm of insects. And in the distance, flashes of light. Weapons fire. Her door burst open. Daniel stood there, already dressed, his face alert and focused. Get dressed, he said. We need to get to the emergency command center. She did not argue. 5 minutes later, they were running through the halls of the estate. Servants rushed past them, frightened and confused. The alarm kept wailing its terrible song. The command center was in the basement, a hardened room filled with screens and communication equipment. Salith activated the main display, and the truth became clear. The Dreth Collective had invaded. The Dreth were raiders and conquerors from the outer regions of the galaxy. They had been growing bolder for years, attacking border colonies and trade routes. But no one had expected this. A full invasion fleet, striking at the heart of Valorian space. Communications are jammed, Salith said, her fingers moving across the controls. I cannot reach the homeworld. What about the defense fleet? Daniel asked. He was standing behind her, watching the screens with those sharp gray eyes. She pulled up the tactical display. The picture was bad. The Valorian defense fleet was outnumbered 3-1. Their ships were scattered, caught off guard by the surprise attack. And the Dreth were pushing hard, driving toward the planet. A voice crackled through the speakers. It was Admiral Torvik, commanding the defense from his flagship. All ships, fall back to defensive positions. Protect the evacuation routes. We cannot hold them here. Salith listened as order after order came through. Torvik was pulling his ships back, abandoning the outer defense stations, giving ground to the enemy. She could hear the fear in his voice beneath the military words. Daniel listened too. His jaw tightened with each order. He's making a mistake, Daniel said quietly. Salith turned to look at him. What do you mean? If he keeps falling back, he will lose the advantage of the defense stations. The Dreth will simply follow and pick off his ships one by one. He needs to hold the line and make them pay for every step forward. Before she could respond, another voice came through the speakers. It was deeper, colder. A Dreth commander. People of Valoria, the voice said. Your fleet is broken. Your alliance with the humans has brought you nothing but weakness. Surrender your border worlds now, and we will show mercy. Resist, and we will burn your cities to ash. The transmission cut off. Silence filled the command center. Salith felt despair washing over her. The fleet was losing. Help was too far away. And here she was, trapped in her basement, able to watch but unable to act. She looked at Daniel. He was staring at the tactical display with an intensity she had never seen before. His eyes moved across the screen, tracking ship positions, attack vectors, formation patterns. His fingers twitched slightly, like a musician hearing a song only he could hear. This was not the polite, quiet diplomat she had lived with for 3 months. This was someone else entirely. Someone cold and calculating and utterly focused. The Dreth formation has a weakness, he said. Their center is strong, but their flanks are thin. They are using older ships there, slower to turn. If your fleet could hit them from the side while they push forward, it would break their momentum. Salith stared at him. How can you see that? Because I have fought battles like this before. Different ships, different enemies, but the same patterns. He turned to face her. I need access to the defense network. Not to command. Just to observe. To see the full picture. She hesitated. Giving a human, even her husband, access to Valorian military systems was a serious protocol. But looking at his face, she saw something that made her decision easy. She saw certainty. She saw a man who knew exactly what he was doing. She entered her codes and gave him access. Daniel sat down at the main console. His fingers moved across the controls like he had been using them his whole life. Within seconds, he had pulled up detailed scans of the battle, ship by ship, weapon by weapon. He studied it for 10 minutes. Salith watched him, barely breathing. On the screen, the battle continued. Valorian ships were dying. The Dreth pushed closer. Finally, Daniel looked up. Your admiral is going to lose this battle, he said. His voice was flat, matter-of-fact. If he continues on this course, the defense fleet will be destroyed within 6 hours. The planet will fall by morning. Salith felt her legs go weak. Is there nothing we can do? Daniel looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something like hope in his eyes. I did not say the battle was lost, he said. I said he is going to lose it. There is a difference. He stood up from the console. I can see a way through this, but I will need to advise your commanders. I will need them to listen to me. They will never listen to a human, Salith said. They might listen to your husband, to the man the Valorian nobility trusted enough to marry. He stepped closer to her. I need you to trust me, Salith. Not as your husband. Not as a diplomat. As someone who has done this before. As someone who knows how to win battles that look impossible. She looked into his gray eyes. She thought about the quiet man who had lived in her house for 3 months. The man who ran alone at dawn. The man who studied tactics for fun. The man who had once commanded a ship called the Resolute. What do you need? She asked. Daniel smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. A communication channel to Admiral Torvik. And for you to convince him not to hang up immediately. Admiral Torvik's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired and afraid, though he tried to hide it behind a mask of authority. Lady Vorn, he said, this is not a good time. We are in the middle of a battle. I know, Admiral, Salith replied. That is why I am calling. I have someone here who wants to help. She stepped aside, and Daniel moved into view of the camera. Torvik's expression turned sour. The human diplomat? What can he possibly offer? Advice, Daniel said calmly. Your current strategy will result in the destruction of your fleet within 6 hours. I am offering an alternative. Torvik laughed, but there was no humor in it. And what makes you qualified to advise me on battle tactics? I commanded the Resolute at Kethra's station. The Admiral's face went blank. For a long moment, he said nothing. Behind him, officers moved across the bridge of his flagship, calling out damage reports and enemy positions. Captain Harper died at Kethros, Torvik said finally. Reports of my death were helpful for certain political purposes, Daniel replied. But I am very much alive. And I am telling you, Admiral, that if you continue your current retreat, you will lose everything. Let me help. Torvik stared at him through the screen. Salith could see the conflict on his face. Pride battling with desperation. The memory of his insults at dinner battling with the reality of the situation. Fine, the Admiral said at last. Advise me, but I give the orders. Understood, Daniel said. He sat down at the console and pulled up the tactical display. His voice changed, becoming crisp and clear, like a different person had stepped into his body. First, Stop the retreat. Order all ships to hold their current positions. The Dreth expect you to keep falling back. When you stop, they will hesitate. If we stop, they will overwhelm us, Torvik protested. Not if we make them come to us on our terms. Order your cruisers to anchor on Defense Station 7. Use the station's weapons to supplement your firepower. Make them pay for every meter they advance. Torvik hesitated, then gave the order. On the display, Salith watched the Valorian ships stop their retreat and form up around the station. The Dreth fleet slowed. Just as Daniel had predicted, they hesitated. Now, Daniel continued, detach your 3 fastest destroyers. Have them swing wide around the asteroid field to the enemy's left flank. Keep them dark. No active sensors, no communications. They need to be invisible. What are they supposed to do? Torvik asked. Wait, I will tell you when. Minutes passed. The Dreth resumed their advance, slower now, more cautious. The Valorian line held, pouring fire into the approaching enemy. Ships exploded on both sides. The battle hung in balance. Daniel watched the screen without blinking. His fingers tapped against the console in a slow rhythm. He was seeing something no one else could see, reading the battle like a book written in a language only he understood. Now, he said suddenly, the destroyers. Have them hit the Dreth carrier on the left flank. Concentrate all fire on its engine section. Torvik relayed the order. On the display, 3 small shapes emerged from behind the asteroids, racing toward the Dreth formation. The enemy did not see them until it was too late. The destroyers fired everything they had. The Dreth carrier shuddered, then broke apart in a bloom of fire and debris. Direct hit, Torvik said, wonder creeping into his voice. The carrier is destroyed. Order the destroyers to retreat immediately, Daniel said. They've done their job. The Dreth commander was furious. Salith could see it in the way the enemy fleet moved. They abandoned their careful advance and pushed hard, trying to crush the Valorian line with overwhelming force. They are coming fast, Torvik said. Too fast. We cannot hold. Yes, you can. Daniel's voice was iron. Hold the line, Admiral. Make them commit everything to breaking through. The battle grew fierce. Valorian ships took damage. 2 cruisers were destroyed. But they held. They held because Admiral Torvik kept giving orders. And Daniel kept telling him what orders to give. And then Salith saw what Daniel had been waiting for. The Dreth flagship had moved forward, pushing to join the attack. It had left its protective screen of escorts behind. It was exposed. Admiral, Daniel said, order all ships capable of offensive action to concentrate fire on the Dreth flagship. Everything you have. Right now. Torvik saw it too. All ships, target the enemy flagship. Fire at will. The Valorian fleet turned its weapons on the massive Dreth command ship. Missiles and energy beams crossed the void. The flagship's shields flickered, held, then began to fail. They are launching fighters, someone called out. Hundreds of them. Ignore the fighters, Daniel said. Keep hitting the flagship. If we kill it, the battle is over. Salith watched in horror and hope as the attack continued. The Dreth flagship was burning now, sections of its hull tearing away into space. But it was still fighting, still firing back, still killing Valorian ships. We are taking heavy losses, Torvik said. I do not know if we can finish it. Daniel closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them, his face was the face of a man who had made impossible decisions before. You can finish it, he said quietly. Order the Starfall to ram the flagship's bridge section. At full speed. Silence. The Starfall was a heavy cruiser with over 800 crew. That is suicide, Torvik whispered. It is victory, Daniel replied. The captain of the Starfall will understand. Give the order, Admiral. or watch everything burn. The seconds stretched like hours. Then Torvik spoke. Starfall, this is Admiral Torvik. You are ordered to engage the enemy flagship directly. Full speed. May the ancestors guide you. On the screen, a single Valorian cruiser broke formation and accelerated toward the wounded Dreth flagship. Fighters swarmed around it. Weapons fire tore at its hull. But it did not stop. The starfall struck the flagship dead center. Both ships vanished in a flash of light brighter than a sun. When the light faded, the Dreth flagship was gone. The enemy fleet hung in space, suddenly leaderless, suddenly afraid. The enemy is breaking, someone reported. They are retreating. It was true. The Dreth ships were turning away, fleeing back toward the edge of the system. The invasion was over. Admiral Torvik appeared on the screen again. His face was pale, shocked, grateful. We won, he said. Against all odds, we won. He looked at Daniel with different eyes. Who are you, really? Daniel did not answer immediately. He was staring at the spot where the starfall had been, where 800 Valorians had just died on his advice. Just a man, he said finally. A man who has done this before. The days after the battle were filled with chaos and celebration. News of the victory spread across the galaxy. The Valorian defense fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, had turned back a full Dreth invasion. It was called a miracle, a turning point, the greatest naval victory in a generation. And at the center of every story was a name no one had expected. Daniel Harper, the human diplomat who had commanded the battle from a basement on the border world. Salith watched from the shadows as her husband became famous against his will. Reporters wanted interviews. Military leaders wanted meetings. Politicians wanted to shake his hand and stand beside him for photographs. Daniel refused almost everything. He attended the memorial service for the crew of the Starfall, standing silently in the back row while families wept. He wrote personal letters to the families of every Valorian who had died following his orders. He spoke to Admiral Torvik privately, though no one knew what they discussed. But mostly, he stayed at the estate, alone in the gardens or walking along the shore of the Silver Lake. One evening, Salith found him sitting on a stone bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. She sat down beside him without speaking. They stayed like that for a long time. The silence between them was comfortable now, in a way it had never been before. 843, Daniel said finally. What? The crew of the Starfall. 843 people. I learned all their names. He paused. I always learn the names. Salith felt her throat tighten. You saved millions of people, Daniel. The entire planet would have fallen without you. I know. His voice was heavy. That is what makes it possible to live with. But it does not make it easy. She reached out and took his hand. He looked at her in surprise, but did not pull away. Tell me about Kethros, she said. Tell me what really happened. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. But then he began to speak, and once he started, he did not stop. He told her about the Resolute, a small destroyer assigned to protect the mining station on the edge of human space. He told her about the enemy fleet that appeared without warning, a force 10 times the size of anything they could fight. He told her about the 3 evacuation ships filled with civilians, including children, that needed time to escape. We could not win, he said. I knew that from the first minute. But we could delay them. We could buy time. His voice dropped lower. So I gave the orders. Hold this position. Take that shot. Protect the evacuation corridor. I watched my crew die one by one, section by section, knowing that every minute they survived was another minute for the civilian ships to get away. Salith listened without interrupting. She could see the memories playing behind his eyes, old wounds that had never fully healed. In the end, 83,000 civilians escaped, and I lost everyone, every single member of my crew. He looked down at their joined hands. The man called it a victory. They gave me medals, but they also saw me as a problem, a reminder that victory sometimes looks like horror. So they buried me. New name, new identity, quiet assignment far from the action. They hoped I would fade away. But you did not fade, Salith said. No, but I thought maybe I could live a quiet life, pretend to be someone ordinary. A small, sad smile crossed his face. And then the death came, and I was in that room watching your fleet die, and I could not just stand there. I could not watch and do nothing when I knew how to help. Salith squeezed his hand. You are not a monster, Daniel. You are a man who makes impossible choices because someone has to. That is not evil. That is courage. He turned to look at her. In the fading light, his gray eyes were soft, almost vulnerable. I have never told anyone the full story before, he said. Not even the therapist they sent me to. Why did you tell me? He thought about it. Because I wanted you to know who you married. The real person, not the ghost they created. And because I wanted someone to know the names. To remember them with me. Tears pricked at Salith's eyes. She had married this man expecting nothing. She had expected a political arrangement, a cold partnership, a life of polite distance. Instead, she had found someone extraordinary hiding behind an ordinary face. Someone broken and brave and profoundly alone. I would like to know them, she said. The names. All of them. If you would share them with me. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly he began to smile. A real smile, the first she had ever seen from him. I would like that, he said. 2 weeks later, they stood together in the great hall of the Galactic Assembly. It was a ceremony of recognition, hosted by the Valorian government and attended by delegates from 100 worlds. Admiral Torvik spoke of courage and sacrifice. Ambassadors spoke of the alliance between Valoria and Terra. Politicians spoke of hope for the future. Daniel stood quietly through all of it, uncomfortable in his formal uniform, wishing he could be anywhere else. Salith stood beside him, radiant in her ceremonial robes. When it was his turn to speak, Daniel kept it simple. Victory is never free, he said. We won because good people were willing to give everything. Remember them, honor them, and work to build a galaxy where such sacrifices are never needed again. The hall erupted in applause. Delegates who had once whispered that humans were weak now looked at Daniel with respect. Perhaps even with fear. Later, after the ceremony, Salith and Daniel walked together through the gardens of the assembly. The stars were out, thousands of them, spread across the sky like scattered diamonds. They look at you differently now, Salith said, double quotes. Yes, I am not sure I like it. You saved their worlds. They are grateful. Grateful today. Tomorrow they will remember that a human commanded their fleet, that a human told their admirals what to do. Fear and gratitude are not so different in the end. Salith stopped walking. She turned to face him and took both his hands in hers. I married a stranger for duty, she said. A quiet man I did not understand. But I think I would like to know the man I am married to. Not the captain. Not the hero. Just Daniel. If he will let me. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. The walls he had built around himself, the masks he had worn for so long, seemed to crack just a little. I would like that too, he said. She smiled. And this time, when he smiled back, it reached his eyes. The galaxy had expected humans to be junior partners in the Great Alliance. They had sent a quiet man to a political marriage, thinking he would be harmless and forgettable. They did not understand that humans do not show their strength openly. They hide it in plain sight. in ordinary faces and modest words, until the moment comes when they are needed. And when that moment comes, they answer.